Thanks for joining us on the show this week. My name is Samantha and Remoy.
My name is Remoy Phillip, the knowledge dropper.
And this is Masculinity. And Remoy just told me that he went to a Lionel Richie show, and I want to talk about. Can we just take a moment to talk about it?
There's a lot of gender stuff in there. There's a lot of, real hard gender stuff in there. But speaking of hard, we're talking about masculinity with a hard K, because men be flexing.
They try to flex. I don't know if they're really flexing.
Men get real hard.
Yeah, that's
Hi-yo.
Okay. Well,
but let's level set for real. This isn't just about men and women, even though it's easy to think that, and me and you, may fall prey to that at times.
It's a trap, guys. Don't fall for it.
But honestly, we're here to talk about this construct, this idea, this mask with a hard K, we all call masculinity. Now, sure, majority of the time, when we say this, we'll be referencing men, males, cis dudes, who marry this construct to their identity, or society forces us to adopt that identity, correct? But dudes aren't the only ones who employ masculinity. What about queer persons? What about cis women who adopt the mask to wear in the workplace, or just to flip it on its ass?
Yeah.
So that's why we're going to have a variety of people come in, whether it's queer individuals, representatives of queer groups, whether it's women themselves to come in and talk about what masculinity means to them. We're going to have a shit ton of people come in here to help us break it down and what that mask means and how we can move on past the mask, the hard K of masculinity.
It's funny that you're like, when you were saying that, I was like picturing all the times in my life where I thought that I wasn't a real girl because I wasn't doing girly shit. Like, I remember one time I was at my friend's house.
Oh my God, you were a tomboy?
Oh my God, yeah. I used to climb trees. I used to like not wear like bras. Like my mom had to be like, you need to wear a bra. You can't just be walking around with no bra on. Anyway, it was, I feel like that might be a little bit too much for me. Whatever. Anyway, but yeah, like it's like, masculinity is a construct. And I think that, the number one reason why we're here to talk about that is because the pitfall is really associating masculinity, or femininity for that matter, with just with a specific sex, right? And I think like, even if, we can take a look at what people are mostly doing, like the majority of men are doing this, majority of women are doing that. The point is like, no one should ever be held to a standard that was made up. It was made up. It's not real.
Oh, is this the nurture versus nature thing?
Yeah, here we go. See, this is the thing that Remoy and I are going to continue to fight about. Listen, Remoy, it is. How can you really
maybe
say
I kind of agree, but I'm just going to fight with you because that's what men do. Hey, I'm on a roll today.
There we go.
But in light of all of this, what are we covering today? We're going to cover white nationalism, right? AKA the expression of kind of hyper extreme masculinity. I've been seeing a lot of that as of recent, and unfortunately. And then we also are going to cover, I don't know if you know who James Damore is, but this was a Google guy. One of the top, if not the top company in the world, saying some interesting comments on women's inherent incompatibility with like technology, and not only that, but positions of power in the workforce.
First of all, he's out of line. But anyway, let's start by talking about white supremacy, right? Like, why are we talking about white supremacy? I really think that it's important that to note that if we're going to be talking about masculinity and the construct thereof, we're going to have to talk about the dominant standard, right? Like recently we saw a group of people who claims that white genocide is real and that they would like to return to more traditional, quote unquote, Christian values.
So we were talking about Charlottesville and what happened in Charlottesville. Did you catch that Vice mini documentary?
Dude, oh my God. I keep on saying I'm gonna watch it, and I'm still like,
Like, I usually skip the news because the news is so depressing, or just can fucking paralyze your whole day. And I purposely kind of stayed away from it. And then I watched the Vice embed, and that shit was real. It was not only real, it was raw. Like, you not only see like the white nationalism, and you not only see the opposition, but seeing just like they have a violent, multiple camera angle look of that, like car. I don't even know what to call it. Car assassination almost. And it was gripping and it was raw. And then you see the response to that. And what happened was, and if you don't know, is that at the University of Virginia, there's a statue of Robert E. Lee, maybe, and
yes.
the city local government was taking it down. White nationalists organized a formal protest to protest that, and they brought along with them torches and violent images of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's anti-protesters opposing the white supremacists, and it got just violent and unfortunate. But within that, not just the inherent racism, we're here to talk about how it relates to the mask of masculinity, of course. And it seems that there are parallels between the supremacy that I saw and that we all saw and that we read about and heard about, unfortunately, and everyday masculinity. And it seems to be a function within each.
One of the big parallels I feel exists between supremacy and this construct of masculinity is entitlement, right? It's like the notion that you can be a group that claims that you're suffering white genocide, that white genocide is actually happening, but you're actually able to talk about it because you're not actually getting killed. None of your people are actually getting killed. It's like an evolved genocide by virtue of the fact that you're white, where you actually get to witness and plan how you're going to overcome that genocide by stopping policies like immigration, overall, like advocating for the marginalization of minorities, you know? And like so the way that this is directly a parallel of masculinity is the notion that in order for you to really think that immigrants are here taking jobs, you have to believe fundamentally that those jobs were here for you. In order for you to say that women are taking your jobs, you have to believe that those jobs were inherently made for you.
Yeah, and it's this idea of entitlement. Like, to really get at it, it's to have the position and the place to kind of step back and say, I own this position in life. I own this place in the world, and there's someone coming in and taking it away from me. Mm-hmm. To have even the space, the mental capacity, or the social platform to say that is that entitlement. To say that
say it, Remoy, say it.
To say that you, as a woman or as a female or as someone who is feminine, is taking my place of power in the workplace is in and of itself emblematic of the entitlement and the privilege that you have as a person in society or in that workplace. So it's not equal. What you're showing is the lack of equality in the workplace, the lack of equality within our society, within our supposedly civil society.
It's just like, what you're saying is brilliant. I remember when Donald Trump was getting elected and like people were talking about like, oh, like Black Lives Matter is ridiculous or whatever. And like, you know, the Daily Show, they went and asked like Trump supporters, like, what's going on or whatever. Why do you think that? And these people were saying like, oh, like they want special treatment. And he's like, I mean, all they want is equality. And do you think that that's special treatment? He's like, yeah. She's like, yeah. And it's like, just that notion of like women wanting to actually just like have a job and get paid equally for that job.
Crazy.
Because they're doing the same shit.
OMG, like, crazy.
And so one thing actually that I want to mention is I ran into this article about sexism being a gateway drug into white nationalism.
Yeah, I get it. Like, so you start off hating women, or let's back up. White men start off like bashing women and hating women, and whether it's misunderstood or it just kind of grows into a worse kind of hate, it turns into ethnic hate or minority hate, and it turns into white supremacy, more or less, right?
It's kind of like that. What happens basically is that, so this guy was like talking about, you know, how originally he found out about the white nationalism movement because people were around him were talking about like how women were taking over, right? And he started to hear some of the things that these people were saying. Like, he started to hear how that was echoing his feelings and his father's feelings about like being kind of emasculated in today's society. So he started to attend the meetings and stuff. And as he got more and more into the movement, he realized that it wasn't actually about issues that men were dealing with in terms of starting to feel marginalized in society, but actually it was more, and like, issues about men being marginalized. I mean, we can talk about the men's rights movement, which we'll talk about later, but there are some issues that men are dealing with that we're not really talking about, which I think is also the point of this podcast. But this was not that. And he realized that really what they were talking about is bashing minorities and like how we can continue to marginalize minorities so that they don't take our place of power in society, rather than like talking about real issues and just being like inappropriate.
Yeah, the technology and the internet has provided us many amazing tools and many opportunities, but one thing that is kind of a negative is that it provides for like communities to build themselves stronger, like in white supremacy, which is hyper masculine. There's the Daily Stormer, right?
Yo,
I didn't find out about the Daily Stormer until the fucking Vice documentary, so I didn't get to see it because it was taken down by then. Because shout out to GoDaddy for stepping up and axing that shit. But what you want to talk about? What the Daily Stormer is,
bruh?
Yo,
the Daily Stormer was rated as the most racist site in America.
It's like Breitbart on like Madroids, juicing, like hella juicing.
So the Daily Stormer is a white nationalist website, and the founder of the Daily Stormer is
He's got a killer name for being a white supremacist.
Anglin?
Kind of like Anglican, because like they're white Brit. Anyway.
Yeah, the whole Anglo-Saxon thing. You know what? I didn't even look into the... Anyway, but... Yeah, so like he's like actually notorious for being like crazy sexist, like somebody who actually advocates against women's rights, like advocates against like women's like freedom of self-expression, and advocates against gender equality because he claims that it feminizes men, right? And like one important point I think about, you know, white nationalism or like white supremacists actually that we don't want to overlook is that there are different factions within that movement, and that while the Daily Stormer represents it and definitely was like one of the most popular websites, it's on the more extreme side of things. You know what I mean? Like, for example, Stormfront, I can't believe I actually know this, but Stormfront was like really about white supremacy, but wasn't necessarily like about like denying women rights. But those rights were, of course, only to be used to further the cause, which, as we know, is overtly like promoting the upholding of patriarchy. And so when we're talking about entitlement, we're talking about entitlement over all sorts of things, but we're also, I mean, here we're talking about masculinity, right? So there's like an entitlement over bodies that don't belong to you.
Right, and it's this almost like slave mentality of ownership. Like, I own other bodies, and other bodies are here to serve me. It's so not crazy because we're so in tune with it. Like, it almost like, oh yeah, of course, that's what people think. And
Right.
at times we're all guilty of it, and it's so normalized in our society, even though it is absolutely absurd.
Completely absurd. And that's actually a perfect segue to, you know, this culture of silence, right? Like how does this continue?
Well, I mean, it sucks. Like when, you know, whether it's racism, whether it's hyper sexism, whether it's whatever sort of discrimination or marginalization, there's competent people, smart people, educated people who are sensitive and thoughtful to speak against these things behind closed doors. But sometimes when this is happening right in front of you, it paralyzes you, or you just need to save yourself and you need to stay silent.
Yeah.
And in a way, unfortunately, especially if you're aware of the situation, you can see what's going on, that kind of makes you culpable. Silence can be an equal or worse offender at times.
I agree. I mean, I feel like, you know, what really continues to enable this is like this silence as kind of a culture of enablement. I think like, you know, one of the things that I ran into when I got to kind of take a look at the Daily Stormer before it went dark, right? And that's kind of how I got really apprised of how ridiculous it was. And like, I was looking through the message boards and stuff to hear kind of what people were talking about. And, you know, there was like this quick, like, post about this guy who like goes to the grocery store. It's like this white dude, obviously, goes to a grocery store. He's dealing with a black cashier who's a woman, right? And she's just like grunting at him. He's like being polite and smiling at her, and she's just not having it, you know? And like, he's like going on this thing about how she's like, how, you know, niggers are like unfriendly and all of this. And I'm just like, but homie, like, Why are you trying to get her to smile and then going back to the Daily Stormer and talking about how black people need to never be around you ever again? Why were you trying? I mean, at least she was being real about it. When you're in public, you're putting on this front like you're just like, a contributing member of society who believes the equality of all, and you want her to smile at you. But when you go home, you participate in this like culture of overt hate.
Well, I think there's a lot of, whether it's hate, I don't know what the word is, but there's a lot of so much pain embedded in a lot of us. And it's just funny to see how quickly that can turn into a place of community for certain people when they don't feel like they have a community for their initial pains or their initial whatever.
Yeah.
And places like the Daily Stormer or online communities can serve to take an initial feeling of loneliness or pain or abuse and kind of it manifests or grows into something so kind of vile, unfortunately, right?
And I guess like one thing that I'm thinking about is like, if we were able to deal with like the hurt and the pain that like men feel, like would we have that many white supremacists out there? I mean, I do think that like obviously there's like an intersection of race that also needs to be dealt with. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
But like, would we? I mean, if we're talking about
if men could like, because like if he's talking about like white supremacy, at least what I've fucking seen is hyper masculine. It's about being strong and not feeling emotions and just demanding what is yours, right? But as we've kind of understanding masculinity, there's no room for vulnerability there.
No.
There's no room for emotion there. And like emotion to purge out your pain or vulnerability to allow yourself to be comforted by somebody who can empathize or sympathize with your pain. If there wasn't masculinity, would this happen? I don't know.
I do really think that there's like an inherent like association of toughness that goes with the brand of masculinity that's pervasive.
Yeah, but let me throw a kink in your bubble right now. Let me like mess with you a little bit. Who would you rather be with, a woke feminist or a white supremacist? Because like a woke feminist is kind of culpable. It's like this culpability that we're talking about, right? Like he's buried kind of the hate within himself, and he knows that shit's going on, but he wouldn't call that shit. Well, a white supremacist is keeping it real.
Remoy, I mean, I could also just I could do battle by myself, Remoy. I don't need no man.
Yeah,
you know what I
don't
mean?
need no man.
I don't need no man. But here's the thing, like, actually, yeah, no, I don't need no man. I don't need either one of these people. Like, I'm good. So yeah, so I mean, so like, where does trauma fit into this context, right? We're talking about like, sexism as a gateway to white nationalism or whatever, to supremacy. We're talking about like people feeling ostracized, right? And like, not having a place to go to and therefore fitting into this group, regardless of all of the hatred that is spews, right? And so, one thing I wanted to mention was Christian Picciolini, who is the founder of Life After Hate, which is an organization that's focused on rehabilitating people who spent time in hate groups, right? And one of the things that he said was that in many cases, a common denominator with people who joined seemed to be that they were looking for a place to belong because they had suffered some type of trauma, some type of bullying, some type of like ostracization prior to that, right? And like, I mean, we'll deal a little bit more of that next week when we have a very special guest.
No, I think it's good to know that there are people putting in the work and who, unfortunately, outside of the news cycle, don't get the time to tell about the work they're doing, to show that there is hope and that there is life after hate, and that there are people who are part of these organizations who are being, for lack of a better word, healed, and are then going to go out in the world and try to flip this on itself and do better and combat, unfortunately, again, lack for a better term, white supremacy and hypermasculinity. So we're going to try something out, a little segment that I'm just throwing at Sam. We're in the moment. We're not on an outline.
I have no idea what's going on.
This is where Sam thrives, like in the moment.
That's what I've been saying. We're about to find out.
So this is tweets of the day. We just typed in hashtag masculine into the Twitter. And we're going to see what we come up with. So we have a tweet here from the Gender Lab. What does that say?
Being a hashtag man or being hashtag masculine doesn't mean he can't cry or express emotions. So far, I like that.
I mean, it's true. Like, this is what we're talking about. Like, masculinity, how we know it, forces men to repress their emotions.
No BS guide on how to unlock your masculine core, your hashtag masculine core. Well, hashtag growth, hashtag recovery. I mean, I think you got to see this picture, though. I mean, that's really...
I mean, this picture is amazing.
Yeah.
This guy's got a 17-pack.
He does. On his front and on his back.
What's frustrating about this is obviously this is like an ad for, like, I don't know, health,
like
physical health.
I got you to say work out.
And it's tied to masculinity, and it's tied to ridiculous physical strength and prowess and...
Full yoke.
Dude's Mad Diesel. But what if you aren't that?
Exactly. Does that mean that you're not masculine? Does that mean that you're not a man because you're not, rocking like fucking just like
800 pack on your stomach?
Like back muscles?
Granted, I would like to have an 18 pack at some point in my life.
I'm not mad at all, but still.
Okay, this is interesting. It says it has like a meme. This is a meme, right?
It's yeah.
I don't really know what a meme is.
It's one of those positive memes, you know.
But this is cool. Like, so this is where it gets a little bit murky. It says, "Stay positive, stay fighting, stay brave, stay ambitious, stay focused, stay strong, masculine." Hashtag masculine. It's complicated because there's a lot of positive things in there that aren't kind of gender specific.
Yeah, and then like the hashtag manliness. Like, why do you think that being ambitious, brave, focused, strong, and fighting and being positive are manly traits? You know, my mom is brave as fuck. She's been fighting since I've known her, my whole life, to be precise, and is the strongest person I know, hands down.
It's cool that this is masculine and these are like positive traits that aren't necessarily like physical masculinity, but then tying it with the hashtag manliness means that this is, again, you're entitled to be these things.
Exactly. And women are just, an afterthought.
So that's tweets of the day. We'll see how that rocks. We'll see how we feel comfortable with that.
Nice. That's a cool little situation. I wasn't expecting it. I'm digging it.
So now we're going to talk about Mr. James Damore. I didn't know who he was until you brought this to my attention, but he was some sort of bigwig coder or something at Google. He said that women can't be in technology because scientifically, almost objectively, men's brains are different than women's brains, and men, because of that difference, are more equipped to be in positions of power and to work in technology.
Which makes absolutely no sense, because it's like, okay, so what about the women that are there? Are they? So
you're just going to disqualify them right there? Yeah.
Right. Like,
are they exceptions to your rule?
And I guess the bigger point that he was making was that significantly less women than men in technology, in the field of technology, and in leadership positions in companies, is that it shouldn't always be chalked up to sexism. And that sometimes we just need to look at the facts of what they are. And maybe women just can't do that shit.
So homie thought he was kind of being like a woke feminist. Like he was actually trying to protect women by saying that women are objectively different.
Mm-hmm. Like they focus more on feelings and they focus more on the social behaviors.
Almost saying so he's almost saying women and femininity are one and the same and men and masculinity are one and the same.
You see where we're going with that?
Damn.
All right, so to just have a look at some of the quotes that were found in this gem of a document. Here goes, quote, "Women on average have more openness directed towards feelings and aesthetics rather than ideas. Women generally also have a stronger interest in people rather than things relative to men." Parenthesis, also interpreted as empathizing versus systemizing. End parenthesis, end quote. What you think about that, Remoy?
Yeah, I mean, so what Damore did is he wrote this memo, and it was an internal memo that circulated around the Google offices far and wide. And what he did is he found kind of objective scientific reports and information along the interwebs or in research to make his claim and to stand upon his claim. But what's faulty about that is, and that's what's problematic about anybody who kind of employs this strategy, is that you're finding evidence to support your claim. He already had this claim in mind, and he went out searching to validate himself. Now, if you were to look at science collectively and their collective response, social science, to this, there's some scientists who have made this argument and maybe proven it, but there's others that dispute it because this social science is so new. There are so many variables and factors when it comes to class, family, ethnic background, so on and so forth, that
history,
long histories, that it's not so easy to derive such a simple conclusion as Damore demands that the people who read his memo, who follow his argument, believe and adopt. It's not that easy to prove, but again, he went to science to validate the claim he already had in the back of his mind.
But one of the things that I really want to take a look at really is like, you know, we talked about all the things that he said, but there was one quote in there, and it's about men.
Sam's having me read this because it's how awesome men and masculinity are. So that's I can't wait. So the quote goes, the male gender role is currently inflexible. Feminism has made great progress in freeing women from the female gender role, but men are still very much tied to the male gender role. If we, as a society, allow men to be more, quote-unquote, feminine, then the gender gap will shrink, although probably because men will leave tech and leadership for traditionally feminine roles.
It's just an oxymoronic way to put it, right? Because what he's saying is like, if the gender gap closes, men will be more feminine. Why are they going to be more feminine? What's going to happen to them if women start earning more money?
And why is that negative? And it goes back to the idea that men are associated with leadership, and our roles in the workplace are to lead. And that's, again, the entitlement of that men kind of perpetuate and are born into and benefit from. Quote, he says, although probably men will leave tech and leadership.
Homie, what?
Innately, men are supposed to be leaders, duh, right?
And women are not, because they're going to go for more feminine roles that talk about feelings.
And what's problematic this when it comes to like masculinity and femininity is it's so embedded within our culture is that boys are raised this way and given that opportunity and allowed to like lead and quote unquote be strong because they are men. They are cis men are masculine, and women are disabled from being leaders because they are feminine and they are supposed to be subservient and subdued to masculinity. And anybody who subscribes to these gender roles is adopting these kind of social tropes and constructs. And that's where it becomes super problematic because it's not about equality. Mm-hmm. It's not about giving each other a chance or opportunity as equals, but it's adopting these masks and benefiting or being subdued from what these masks bring.
Which is also like, you're talking about like men, you know, like if the gender gap shrinks, like men will become more feminine and like blah, 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 as if like there's like one way to be a man. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and that's the number one issue that I take with this whole situation is like, you know, what if you're somebody who's not generally like, what if you're like a dude who likes social shit and like aesthetics?
Yo, I'm into my feelings all the time, bruh.
You know what I'm saying? And look at you, you're a great leader, Remoy.
To say that there's these like objective walls that kind of group in what it is, like the specificities or the specifics of what it means to be masculine or feminine, and then have those as like kind of the codes of how we live, and they're just rigorous. And this is what you have to be masculine. This is what we've been dealing with for centuries now, it feels like. And for Google to be the leader in technology, to be leading the free world, and to have it come directly from them, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I think I just shot myself in the foot because I just think I said it was nurture versus nature.
Because it is. And Remoy, you know what? I'm not here to convert anybody. I'm not here to like talk about how
Homie, I ain't converted yet. I ain't converted yet.
Okay. But I mean, isn't it though? Isn't it nurture versus nature?
I mean, to be honest, yeah, there is a lot. And you don't need concrete evidence. You don't need much evidence to prove that there's a lot of nurture, meaning the way that individuals are brought up, taught explicitly, whether it's through the school system or whether through its parents, or whether it's implicit in just the way that we watch TV and movies that show women always being subservient to men, and every story is about fucking men and their fucking boring coming of age stories. Yo, I love me a Good Will Hunting. Don't get me wrong.
So when it comes to James Damore, it's like, is he being critical of women because they supposedly haven't met his standards of success? Like, there has to be some room to fail.
No, I think what you're saying is fucking huge when it comes to any sort of equality, especially when it comes to gender equality on the spectrum, when it comes to race equality on the spectrum, is that what James Damore is saying is he's being critical of women because they haven't met his measure or the kind of general measure of what it means to be successful in the tech industry. It's not equality just because you have a chance and then you may fail or you don't meet the standards yet. Equality, like true equality, like blissful freedom, is having the space to fucking fail and fail and learn and find the ways that you or the people around you or your gender can find their way and their strategies for their success, and to have the comfort to know that they can fail. But to be so critical of women, to say that they aren't allowed positions of power because they scientifically can't hold that power, is ridiculous, because this is such a new idea of study when it comes to the science of this, but it's also such a new place for women to be in positions of power, to be in even in the workforce, that they haven't had the opportunity as men have had for the fucking entirety of civilization to define how and what success looks like.
Like, why isn't the failure on the part of the system that has been excluding women from these positions and continues to exclude women from these positions, like, of power, of technical savvy, of whatever? This notion that, like, sexism doesn't actually exist because it's actually women who just aren't capable.
Bullshit.
Like, are you joking? Like,
Bullshit.
there are currently... Listen, my family's from Cameroon, right? If you go to Cameroon right now and you go to a school, it's called a CETIC. It's a technical middle school. When I went to Cameroon in 2015, 2 years ago, I rolled up on a fucking technical middle school. Remoy, ask me how many girls there were there.
One.
Yes.
Wow.
Guess who that girl was? Me. I was the only one there. I was there with my uncle, my dad, the director of the school, a couple teachers, and a bunch of kids. And I was the only girl present at the school.
That is emblematic. I mean, that is the issue. And if you're only going to put boys through school, or if the only ones who have access to even and like have the freedom to enjoy tech and to understand tech and be explicitly educated in tech, and it's only boys, how are women supposed to succeed? Oh my God. How are they going to if you don't give them the opportunity? But real talk, I was listening to NPR the other day, and don't fucking judge me because I fucking hate NPR because that's for like boring white people. Shots fired. So they were talking about kind of the opposite of Damore, an interesting human named Reshma Saujani. Shout out to my brown people. She's the founder of the organization called Girls Who Code. She started back in 2012 here in our beautiful, lovely city of New York, and basically just started leading summer workshops. And for girls who are ages 13 through 17, it's like immersive, just drop them straight in tech. And now it's reached 40,000 women.
I also actually want to highlight another company that I actually have volunteered for called Black Girls Code, that's now like making waves throughout the States. So I'm really happy that this is actually taking things by storm and actually creating space for girls to get into this thing early. And one of the things that I don't want to step over is I'm already hearing the peanut gallery talk about how things are happening in Cameroon are not happening here. Okay, stay tuned for a single sex education episode, because I can already hear you talking shit. And the whole situation of girls and boys being treated differently in school because they're expected to grow up to be different people is a very real thing. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you think about this whole discussion. If you have some thoughts about white supremacy and how that's likened to masculinity, if you have some comments about James Damore and how you feel about women and men in positions of leadership and positions of in technology, holler at us.
Yeah, if you're a woman who, is in tech or thinks this is heinous and is combating that, and you are ambitious and you are driven and you are brave and you are strong, you want to come and talk on the pod, we can't find you unless you let us know.
Exactly.
So holler at us. So what are we on? I fucking hate social media. How do you find us?
So we are on Facebook. The Facebook page is called MASKulinity. Don't forget the K, because otherwise you will not find us.
So that's not hashtag. It's an at symbol.
No, it's just
MASKU. Okay, so but it's
Facebook.
masculine. MASKULINITY.
Yeah, we are on Twitter at MASKulinity Pod. So that's MASKULINITYPOD.
And if you're listening to this on SoundCloud or if you're listening to this on the iTunes, give us some love, thumbs up, stars, whatever they do.
Yeah.
Tell your friends, tell your people. Mm-hmm. We really believe in it, that this is a start to a conversation.
Yeah.
And we want more people talking about it.
Exactly. And if you don't like us, tell us. You know what I mean? We want to know that too.
A little constructive criticism never hurt nobody.
That's right.
Never hurt no Remoy.
That's right.
So let us know, and again, spread the word.
Yeah, so thanks again for listening. Again, this is Samantha and Zessie.
Yeah, this is Remoy Phillip.
And this has been MASKulinity. See you next time.